All right, Shalom. First and foremost, call halal yamla, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Harachakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and bishops and elders of Great Millstone, from whom I learned this truth from, and also peace and salutation to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. And pretty much I'm going to be going into an article, as you can see here on the screen. This is from the Newsbreak app. And the source of this article is from the New York Post. And it says, the title of the article says, as you see here on the screen, Trump to flood big cities like Los Angeles and New York City with ICE agents in single largest mass deportation program in history. Okay. And then it goes a little bit into it. It says, President Trump announced plans to flood Democrat-run cities, namely New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, with new larger waves of immigration and customs enforcement, ICE, agents, to bring about the single largest mass deportation program in history. And then it says Trump highlighted the sweeping change targeting the majority Democrat cities on Truth Social Sunday night, as he praised ICE agents for their incredible strength, determination, and courage. Okay, so as it basically went into, Trump, following all of the, the protests, and the riots that have been breaking out over the past week, especially out there in Los Angeles. Cities like Los Angeles, where now, in response to all the protests and the riots and whatnot that's been taking place over the past week, over the the amounts of ICE raids and deportations we've been seeing over this the first half of this year so far, 2025. Now Trump is getting ready to come down with the hammer even more. Sending more ICE agents throughout cities across Babylon the Great, especially, major cities as it went into cities like New York City, Los Angeles, as well as Chicago, and, this is coming, days after Trump also said this. Okay, now this article is from 8 days ago. Okay, and the source of this article is from Express US. All right. And as you can see, the title of it says, Donald Trump warns we are going to have troops everywhere after ICE protests. Okay. And he said this, coming on the heels of, all the protests and the riots that took place out there in Los Angeles, right? A week ago. Okay. In response to, all those protests and riots, back then, a few days ago, as he said, we're going to have troops everywhere after ICE protests. And so here we see days later, now he's coming with this, looking to flood, ICE agents all throughout major cities, New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, and many more major cities, to crack down on, what he, calls illegal immigration and, deport illegals out of the country and whatnot. Which is all, mainly targeted at the Northern Kingdom tribes, Issachar, primarily Issachar, so-called Mexicans, along with the, Zebulon, the tribes that dwell, mainly in so-called Central America, Panama, Guatemala, Honduras, and many of the tribes that also come from, Central and South America, because, here it is, over these past 4 years under the Biden administration, we've been seeing all types of, people migrating from China, a lot of, military age, fighting age, Moabites coming into the country, with no women, no children, no family, just them by themselves, military age, along with, other various heathen nations coming into the country, military age fighting men. All right, but but nonetheless, a lot of these ICE raids and deportations have been mainly targeted at the northern tribes. Okay, Issachar and Zebulon and Asher and Naphtali, and the rest of the various northern tribes. Okay, they're making, and a lot of the excuses that Trump and his administration is making to justify all these mass deportations. What, saying that they're criminals and they're part of gangs and cartels and MS-13 and all of this. But when you go into a lot of these particular cases of these deportations, a lot of these northern tribes that they've been deporting were legal citizens. Okay, legal citizens that's been in this country for years, working, paying their bills, paying their taxes, just like every other natural born so-called American citizen. But because they're of those tribes, Trump and his in ICE and whatnot is looking to get rid of them anyway. Okay, and when you go into the scriptures, okay, a lot of these deportations that's taking place against the northern tribes, especially Issachar, that took place back then, and with the northern tribes being led into the Assyrian captivity. Okay, real quick, this is Second Esdras. All right, Second Esdras 13, and I have it in the GNT. Second Esdras 13, and let's see. Yes, Second Esdras 13 and verse 40 in the GNT. It says, "These are the 10 tribes of Israel who were taken away into captivity." All right, the 10 tribes referring to the northern tribes, who were taken into captivity by the Assyrian Empire. Save Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, who were eventually, later down the line taken into captivity under the Babylonians. Okay, but it says again, Second Esdras 13 verse 40 in the GNT. It says, "These are the 10 tribes of Israel who were taken away into captivity in the time of King Hoshea. King Shalmaneser of Assyria captured them and deported them to a foreign land east of the Euphrates River." Okay, which is basically the region of Assyria, around the region of modern day Iraq. All right, but as you can see, when the northern kingdoms, all right, when all the kings of the northern kingdom, all right, because you got to understand when you go into when you read in First Kings the 11th chapter, in the 12th chapter, basically after the sins of King Solomon, one of the main judgments that the Lord brought was that the nation would be split into 2 kingdoms. Northern kingdom led by the tribe of Ephraim, okay, and then the southern kingdom, which consisted of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. All right, and pretty much, when you read throughout, First Kings, okay, and then the majority of Second Kings, you read about how you had a lot of wicked kings amongst the northern and southern kingdom, which when you go into the history of the kings of the northern kingdom, all right, none of the northern kingdom kings did right. They were all wicked. Okay, but then when you go into the history of the kings of the southern kingdom, some did right, some did okay, but the majority of the kings of the southern kingdom did wicked as well, which eventually led to the southern kingdom, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi going into captivity under the Babylonians. All right, but when you go into the history, in Second Kings, the northern tribes, led by the tribe of Ephraim, went into captivity under the Assyrian Empire. Okay, and as we see right here in Second Esdras 13 verse 40 in the GNT. Okay, they were basically deported out of the land of Israel. All right, talking about the northern tribes, they were basically deported out of the land of Israel and into the Assyrian captivity, the region of Assyria. You know, they were judged by Yahweh Shemel Shai by going through mass deportation. And so here we see the northern tribes being persecuted once again and facing deportation here in America, Babylon the Great. It just further backs up the scripture in Ecclesiastes, that which is then is now. You see, the northern tribes are facing the same judgments now that they were receiving back then, in the form of these mass deportations. You see, and so, and not to mention, as we know and understand as well, that Trump is also that cruel Lord that's spoken of in Isaiah the 19th chapter. Okay, going into prophecy of Egypt, which is talking about America, the modern day spiritual Egypt. Okay, and we're seeing right here, just further examples of Trump being that cruel Lord. Okay, speaking of flooding these big cities, okay, with ICE agents for the purpose of mass deportation, mass deportation against the northern tribes. All right, and then you best believe, because not only are these ICE agents and whatnot going to be used against the northern tribes, but they're also going to be used against the southern tribes as well. You so-called Negroes out there, that's mocking so-called Latinos, for all these mass deportations and whatnot. Talking all on social media and TikTok and whatnot, talking shit against the so-called Latin tribes, okay, because they're being deported in mass numbers. Well, guess what? You so-called Negroes are next on Trump's list of mass deportations, okay. Because hey, even earlier this year, you even had Trump, tapping into bringing segregation back. You see, bringing back racial segregation. All right, and not to mention, you even have Trump also tapping into deporting even legal American citizens to prisons outside of the country, Alcatraz Island, El Salvador, Honduras, Guantanamo Bay. Okay, and when you hear Trump, tapping into all these types of things, who you think he's going to target, eventually when he comes down with all these executive orders and draconian measures, all the tribes eventually, not just the northern tribes, Issachar, Ephraim, Gad, and so on and so forth, but he's also going to be targeting the southern tribes as well, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, especially Judah, so-called Negroes, black Americans, all right, he's especially going to be targeting you, okay, to get you up out of the country, to make America so-called, white again, Edomite again, okay, so that Edomite birth rates can, grow in the country once again, he's gonna do that. One of the ways he's gonna do that is by getting rid of niggas, okay, so all of this is, not only going to be targeted against the northern tribes, but is ultimately going to be targeted against all the tribes, all right, and even Yahushua, told us in the book of Luke. Let's go to Luke 19. Luke 19 in verse 43. This Yahushua is speaking. Okay. Now, in this, what I'm about to read, what Yahushua is speaking of right here is talking about, what befell our forefathers in Jerusalem in 70 AD. Okay, when the Romans, encamped about, the land of Israel and encamped about Jerusalem and basically took down our forefathers amongst the southern tribes and took down Jerusalem and sacked the second temple, and pretty much slaughtered, millions of our forefathers that were in the land at that time, the Holy Land, and brought a good number of us into captivity to Rome, put us in the Colosseums and whatnot. Okay, and as well, forced many of our forefathers to flee into parts of Africa, namely West Africa, in other surrounding countries. Okay, but what I'm about to read here in Luke 19 and 43, Yahushua is speaking. I'm also going to apply this today in this time of what Esau Edom is getting ready to do to all the tribes of our people in this time, as Scripture says, that which is then is now. So this is Luke 19 verse 43. Yahushua is speaking. He says, "For the day shall come upon thee that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee." He's talking to Israelites, our forefathers. Okay, "For the day shall come upon thee that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee, and compass thee round, and keep thee in on every side." Yeah, just as this applied to what the Romans did to our forefathers in 70 AD, we can also apply this to what Esau Edom is doing to the tribes here in this time. Okay, especially looking at those two articles that we just read. Okay, well, Trump is going to be sending ICE agents. Okay, and as well very soon even military soldiers and Marines and whatnot into these major cities to deal with all the tribes. Okay, from Judah down to Ephraim, down to Gad, all the way down to Issachar. All the tribes that are here in Babylon. Okay, so Yahushua said again, Luke 19 and 43, "For the day shall come upon thee that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee, and compass thee round, and keep thee in on every side." Verse 44, "And they shall lay thee even with the ground, and with thy children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation." Yeah, and 2/3 of our people to this day, they don't know the time of the Lord's visitation. Okay, they don't understand that we're in the time of judgment. Okay, and that Esau's getting ready to come down with great wrath. Okay, matter of fact, let's go to Revelation 12. All right, Revelation 12 verse 12, it says, "Therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil," all right, Esau Edom, "is come down unto you having great wrath, because he knoweth that he had but a short time." Yeah, and Esau Edom is getting ready to come down with great wrath. The sword, these ICE, in a form of what? These ICE agents. Okay, then eventually it's going to turn into what? Military soldiers, Marines out in the streets. Okay, robot dogs and AI police robots roaming the streets, martial law. Okay, those are all major aspects of Esau coming down with great wrath. Okay, the sword. All right, because what, as it said, because he knows that he has but a short time left. Okay, he knows that he's at the last leg or the tail end of his blessing. Okay, where Yahushua is getting ready to come back to deliver us, the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel. Okay, and so what is Esau going to attempt to do? Basically try to wipe out all the tribes, so that what so that he can get the birthright back, and upset prophecy. Okay, and keep Jacob, the Israelites, from obtaining our blessing, the fatness of the earth in the kingdom of heaven. All right, and when we go down in the chapter, Revelation 12 verse 17, who is Esau Edom mainly going to target his great wrath against? Okay, Revelation 12 verse 17, "And the dragon," okay, who was the dragon? The revival of the ancient Western Roman Empire. Okay, which is fulfilled in what? America. Babylon the Great. Okay, it says, "And the dragon was wroth with the woman." Okay, and who's the woman that it speaks of in this chapter? The nation of Israel, all 12 tribes. Scripture speaks about, the Lord likens the nation of Israel to a comely and delicate woman. All right, and it says, "And went to make war with her." Aslaki, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. See that? So, Esau Edom, okay, here in Babylon the Great America, primarily, okay, is wroth with the nation of Israel, all 12 tribes. And he's getting ready to do what? Come down great wrath, okay, make war, and especially against who? As I said, the remnant of her seed, okay, us the hopeful elect, especially, those of us that are, out on the highways and the byways preaching this gospel, okay, chanting down, this beast system and his image and his mark, chanting down Babylon the Great and singing a new song, okay, and that's especially who Esau is going to be targeting amongst the tribes, us the hopeful elect, that have the new song, that's, that have this, as it said, which keep the commandments of Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai, and have the testimony of Yahweh Shai Mashiach. And what is the testimony of Yahweh Shai? The spirit of prophecy. So the Esau Edom, is going to be coming against, all the tribes, with great wrath. But he's especially going to be, before it's all said and done, he's especially going to be coming after those of us that are, that are preaching and prophesying, that have the testimony of Yahweh Shai. This everlasting gospel, the new song, okay, which speaks directly against, Babylon the Great, and against his beast system as a whole, and its image, and its charagma, and all of his pseudosciences technology that Esau is pushing in these latter days. Okay, we're going to be the main targets of Esau's great wrath. As well as these deportations very soon. Let's get Ezekiel 21. Ezekiel 21, and I'm going to start at verse 9. It says, Son of man, prophesy and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, say a sword is sharpened and also furbished. Furbished. Okay? And what does the sword represent? Esau, Edom coming down great wrath via what? Martial law, these these ICE agents, okay? As well as what? His robot dogs, his robot AI police that is getting ready to unleash in the streets of America, Babylon the Great, okay? Mass surveillance, all right? All these things, the Lord is putting the spirit on Esau Edom to prepare and sharpen, okay? As it said, as it says in verse 10, it is sharpened to make a sword slaughter. It is furbished that it may glitter. Should we then make mirth? It contemned the rod of my son as every tree. Yeah. So hey, so the Lord is putting his spirit on Esau Edom to prepare all these things. Okay. To ultimately come down great wrath, upon pretty much all the earth. Okay. But especially come down upon great wrath upon the 2/3 of his people. You see? It says, for the purpose of what? To make a sword slaughter. Because what is a sword? An actual sword. What is a sword used for? It's used for the purpose of killing. Unaliving people. Okay? And that's what the Lord created Esau to be. As our forefather King David said in Psalm 17, deliver me from the wicked, which is thy sword. Esau Edom, one of the reasons that the Lord created Esau Edom was to basically be the whipping stick of the Lord, to bring judgment upon our people, severe judgments, okay? And it's going to be no different in these latter days. The Lord's going to use Esau Edom, his sword, okay, to make a sword slaughter upon the 2/3 of his people. Okay, because as we read in Luke 19, because 2/3 of our people know not the time of visitation. They don't understand that Yahweh Shai is getting ready to return. Okay, and that before Yahweh Shai comes, Jacob's trouble is going to come to pass. Okay, 2/3 of our people don't understand these things according to prophecy. So therefore, they're going to they're going to be destroyed according to prophecy very soon. All right. It says, Verse 10 again, Ezekiel 21:10. It is sharpened to make a sore slaughter. It is furbished that it may glitter. Should we then make mirth? It contemneth the rod of my son as every tree. Verse 11. And he hath given it to be furbished that it may be handled. The sword is sharpened, and it is furbished to give it into the hand of the slayer. And who's the slayer? Esau Edom. Okay, the sword of the Lord. All right, the wicked, the man of sin. And it says, verse 12, cry and howl, son of man, for it shall be upon my people. It shall be upon all the princes of Israel. Okay, terrors by reason of the sword shall be upon my people. Therefore, smite therefore upon thy thigh. And so the Lord's getting ready to use Esau Edom to bring terrors upon his people, the 2/3 of our people. Okay, to make a sore slaughter. All right. In these mass deportations is also gonna be a part of these terrors as well. All right, because what? The Lord's getting ready to judge the 2/3 of our people according to all their wickedness. He's gonna choose their delusions, as it speaks of in Isaiah the 64th chapter. Because what? 2/3 of our people, they refuse to take heed to the Lord's prophets as men that he sent on the highways and the byways to preach his gospel. They refuse to repent and come back to the Lord and be converted. All right. So therefore what? The Lord, has his 2/3 of our people, set for judgment, set for slaughter. All right. And so, just going back to this article real quick, as it said, the title of it says, Trump to flood big cities like Los Angeles and New York City with ICE agents in single largest mass deportation program in history. Okay, you notice the key word that it uses, flood. Okay, now of course, what scripture immediately comes to mind? All right, Isaiah the 59th chapter. This is Isaiah chapter 59 and verse 19. It says, so shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west. Okay, and who is the they that is speaking of that's going to fear the name of Yahweh Shema Shai here in the west and throughout the four corners of the earth? Us, the hopeful elect. Okay, because you best believe, although we know Esau Edom is getting ready to come down with great wrath and come down with the sword and pseudoscience, technology, and mass persecution, all these things, the Lord also, comforts us, the hopeful elect, letting us know as well that, hey, the Lord's going to, be with us in these times to protect us, okay, and guard us, and ultimately deliver us out of the hands of Esau Edom, okay. So it says, again, Isaiah 59 verse 19, so shall they fear the name of the Lord, Yahweh Shema Shai from the west. Okay, and where the main bulk of the captivity of the Israelites in these latter days will be here in the west, in Babylon the Great, the United States, located where at the northwestern hemisphere of the world. Okay, and it says, and his glory from the rising of the sun. Okay, the sun rises from the east. So basically, you have the elect scattered, north, south, east, and west, all throughout the four corners of the earth, fearing and calling upon the name of Yahweh Shema Shai. And it says, when the enemy shall come in like a flood, all right, when the enemy shall come in like a flood, all right, Esau Edom coming down with great wrath, the spirit of the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai shall lift up a standard against him. You see that? So, though Esau Edom is getting ready to come with mass persecution and ICE and martial law and deportations and sword slaughter and things like that, the Lord, is also comforting us, the hopeful elect, that fear the name of Yahweh Shema Shai, that when these times come, the Lord's going to also lift up a standard for us against Esau Edom, okay, and all of his weapons and whatnot, all right, because, that's going to be the time where the Lord's going to make known who are his chosen, okay, and the elect are going to endure to the end, and not be overtaken by by Esau's wrath. You see? Because what? As the scripture speaks about, when all hell breaks loose and Esau, Edom come down with great wrath, it's going to be like a time never before. As it speaks of in, Daniel the 12th chapter. Okay, well, things are going to get so bad, the Lord's going to have to, one of the standards that the Lord's going to have to lift up for us, the hopeful elect, is, using the Archangel Michael and our holy angels to protect us, all right, when these times come, to make sure that we endure to the end, all right. And even Yahushua himself in Matthew 24 spoke about how these times to come is going to be like a time that, like never before, ever since the nation was in the earth. Okay. And so, hey, this is going to be, a time more than ever, for the Lord to, lift up a standard for us, for his elect, us, the hopeful elect, that fear and call upon the name of Yahweh Shema Shai and preach this gospel. Because, again, Esau, Edom, he knows his time is short. Okay, he knows he only has but a short time left. He knows he's about to be taken out of his blessing and, taken out of, from ruling the fatness of the earth. Okay, and Esau's not going down without a fight, And so, hey, we're gonna have to lift. We're gonna need Yahweh Shema Shai to lift up a standard for us when Esau, Edom comes in like a flood. Okay, like these ICE agents that Trump is looking to send throughout major cities across Babylon. So so I'm gonna pretty much end it off on there. Lord willing, this video is edifying, and until next time, shalom.